Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to go over the best console controller settings that I found for Valorant on console. After about 3 days of playing, I feel like I've gotten a pretty good idea of the best settings you can have. So I'm going to run through some good settings, some recommendations, as well as some tips and tricks along the way. So when you open up your settings, you can navigate by using R1 over to the controls tab, or Xbox, you can press whatever the right bumper is. From here, you're going to want to make sure you know what all your buttons do and what button layout you're on. Now for me, I play bumper jumper tactical on Call of Duty, so that feels the most natural to me. But use whatever you like here or leave it on default and just learn that. But for me, these are my keybinds if you want to copy them. This is basically bumper jumper tactical from Call of Duty. So if you do like playing like that, then I would recommend just copying these. Basically, you can use their bumper jumper preset, which allows you to jump with L1. And then I did manually have to switch the L3 and the R3 because otherwise, for some reason, the L3 was crouch, which is very strange to me. So I swapped that over to R3, which made my ADS button L3, which actually works a lot better for me. If you do need to remap any of these buttons, you can simply go down to the buttons section, and here's where you're gonna be able to actually remap any of these buttons that you would like. You can even do a push to talk, which I actually didn't know until just now. So there you go. You can assign a push to talk button if you wish to. Once you've got your buttons set up, you can go to the aim tab. This is where it gets interesting. So sensitivity, I play currently on 10 across the board. For me, this feels good, and I'm going to stick with this for now. I'm not saying I won't change this in the future, but for now, 10 across the board feels good to me. Although I have heard of other people that are using much lower sensitivity. So for 10, it may be too high for some of you. I would recommend starting at about 4 to 6 and see what you feel like using that sensitivity. Basically, when it comes to picking your sensitivity, you want to make sure it's something that you can kind of snap over to people with without over flicking too bad. Because if you're on the sensitivity I am and you're like just way over flicking them, and as you can see, the aim assist is kind of going crazy. But if you're just like trying to aim it like this wall or whatever, and then you're like, you just can't control it, then your sense is probably too high. Whereas if you find you're having trouble being too slow to like switch targets and stuff, you might want to bump it up a little bit. But I would say start in the 4 to 6 range, or really the 4 to 10 range, and then just find what works for you, because it's really going to depend on your personal preference and how you like to play. Once you find a sensitivity you're comfortable with, which also, to add to that, you might want to mess around with changing some of the focus and ADS and sniper ones down a little bit or up, whatever you like. I just like them all the same. It works for me for now. But once you've got your sensitivity set, a few other interesting settings here that you might want to check out. First is the focus / ADS priority. Now, it comes default on prioritize focus, which basically means whenever I ADS, it does this. It goes into the focus mode, which I have found that this might be the best way to have the setting set, because you're able to actually strafe while shooting in the focus mode. But in order to do this, because you're going to be walking by default with the focus mode on, in order to do this, strafing while shooting in focus mode, you're going to have to change another setting, which we're going to get to very shortly. Now, if you are in focus mode like this, and that's your default ADS, like whenever I press my L2 to ADS, to toggle to the regular ADS that you might be more familiar with, I simply press L3 on my keybind. Again, it's going to depend on what your button binds are. But for me, I can just toggle in and out of focus mode and ADS very quickly by just simply pressing on L3, and it works really great for me. So I currently have it set to default on the focus mode though, like I was saying, because a lot of times you're going to be able to strafe and kill people like this, and you don't want to be ADSing all the time. Although ADSing is pretty good, and I was able to get a lot of kills whenever I did have it set as my default mode. So if you do want to try that out, and for some reason that's just how you want to play, that's perfectly fine. All you have to do is change the prioritize focus to prioritize ADS, and then you're going to be able to just simply snap right on like that, and then it'll default to this, and then you can toggle it to focus mode. After that, you're going to want to make sure you come down here to the aim inner dead zone. I think this setting makes one of the biggest differences when it comes to how precise you're able to be. I have mine on 0.03. If you have a controller that has a lot of stick drift, for instance, you're probably going to need this up a little bit. But I think for most people, probably, especially on PS5 or newer console where you shouldn't have too much stick drift, at least I don't on my PS5 controller. My PS4 controllers have more drift. But 0.03 works really well for me. I would recommend anything up to 0.05. You probably don't want anything higher than that because it's going to be hard to make those smaller adjustments. Like if I just want to like do this like very slightly, I can actually do this by slightly moving my stick. So this works best for me to make these little adjustments. Now, if it's a little too sensitive and you're whiffing because of it or something, then you might want to bump it up to like the 0.05 or something like that. But for me, I think 0.03 is a really good sweet spot where I have a lot of control, but it's not too hard to control. Once you've got your aim inner dead zone set, the next big setting you're going to want to take a look at is the aim curves. And they do have 4 different settings for it, and they each have 9 different curve types. So this current setup you see right here, standard, light, standard. I just tried the lights out today and I really like them. Previously, I was on all standard for all of these, just like this. This also to me feels very good, and I think is probably the first or second best option. So try these all on standard to start off with, but if you're comfortable with that and you want to try something else, you can try standard, light, standard, which I think maybe gives you a little bit more control when you are in that focus or ADS mode to make those finer adjustments and get those nice crisp headshots. And now there are a lot of other settings here with an entire 9 curves, but I tested several of these and honestly none of them felt good at all to me, except for a standard and then light on the other curves here. But I wouldn't recommend messing with any of these other ones right now. Maybe someone finds some crazy settings in the future, but for now I think the other ones just aren't very good, and I just recommend standard, light, standard, or just leave them all on standard. Either one of those should give you the best results. Once you're done with the aim section, you can move on to the movement section. Now there's not as many settings here. These are mine. You can copy them if you like. I think they're all on default except for the movement dead zone I have on 0.1. This one might come down to preference though, because you want to make sure that you are able to walk forward with your left stick, which I'm assuming is most people's move stick. But you want to make sure you're able to walk forward without running and making noise in this game. So to do that, you're basically just going to be slightly pushing the stick forward. Now, the faster you push it forward, the faster you'll walk. But if you walk too fast, you end up running and making noise, and you want to make sure you're staying silent. So you might want to adjust that a little bit if you have problems where you're running too much and making noise whenever you don't want to when it comes to pushing your movement stick. But for me, these settings right here on 0.98 and 0.1 work very well. After the movement tab, we can move on to advanced. Now there's a lot of settings here you can change and mess with. I don't think I really changed too many of these. I do have my L2, R2 button dead zone all the way down just so they're as responsive as possible. Plant defuse behavior, this is preference. I like mine on hold so that if I do need to come off the bomb for a quick clutch headshot or something, then I can just simply let up on the button. I don't have to toggle it, but that's preference. Now the one setting I was talking about earlier you might want to change for your focus mode is called walk while in focus. I recommend turning this off, or at least trying with it off, because otherwise you won't, whenever you focus, it's going to force you to walk like this and you're going to be very slow and you're not going to be able to strafe or really move at all. With this off, you're able to actually strafe just like you do on PC normally. So this actually is really good in terms of having better movement. Now there is aim assist on console, so strafing might not be as good as it is on PC. I'm going to still try doing this movement and strafing with the focus mode on for the next day or two, and then I'm going to determine if I actually want to stick with this and actually keep strafing. Right now I'm thinking I will. I think this is still just well worth having, and you can still walk if you need to by just slightly pushing in your stick. You just want to make sure you don't push it in too far and end up making noise. Other than that setting, I play with vibration off, but that's totally personal preference. So now we've went through all of the controls and controller settings that I recommend or have thoughts and tips and tricks on. The next thing is going to be the crosshair. I'll just cover in this video while we're here. So I have the same crosshairs you can see on the right and you saw earlier in the video when I was in the range. And these are my settings if you want to copy them. I will just kind of scroll through them here. You can pause the video, copy them, whatever. Inner lines and outer lines are all off. So I just like this crosshair. It's just simple. It's the right size for console. On PC, I like a much smaller crosshair so I can feel really precise with like a little dot or something. But for console, I like to have a little target to fit their head into. So this works very well for me. So if you do like my crosshair, there's the settings, you can copy them. Hopefully this video helped. I tried to cover all the things I've learned and experienced within console Valorant and its controller settings so far in about 3 days of playing. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all the support on the recent videos. And as always, thanks for watching.